I scaled this automotive e-commerce brand to $187,157 per month in revenue exclusively using Google Ads with an extremely simple Google Ads strategy. And in this video, I want to show you exactly how I made it happen step by step. Now, this was an unique case study for me personally because it went to show the simplistic nature of Google Ads and how just having a strong foundation along with a fairly simple but straightforward ad strategy can do the trick and can actually scale your brand to a very new level. Let's take a look at the overall results. So in the last 30 days, if we look right here, this brand has been generating anywhere from $20,000 in revenue in a single day all the way to maybe $5,000-$6,000 in revenue. But on a 30-day basis, we're at $187,157,000 roughly. Now, and with this brand specifically, we actually started handling this brand's Google Ads accounts during the end of November, which is when we actually started working with this account and when we actually started scaling this brand. If we take a look at this on a month-to-month basis, we can clearly see the overall trajectory of how this brand has improved in terms of both the ad spend and the revenue. Now, going to the back end, in the last 30 days, we continue to scale this brand. In the last 30 days, we did 187K from Google, but the reality is it's a little bit higher than that because this brand at this point gets 90% of its sales from Google and 10% from Meta ads, where previously when we first started work, it was the opposite. They were barely doing anything on Google Ads and about 80 to 90% was coming from Meta ads, from giveaways, so on and so forth. But we can clearly see the beautiful scale that we have been able to achieve for this brand during this time period, where during September and October of 2024, they were at about $150,000, $180,000 in total revenue, but they had ever since plateaued at this level. They were not growing fast enough. But flash forward to when we started working with them, started handling Google Ads for them, every single month has either been steady or in the growth phase. I mean, right at this point of time, we're already up to $300,000 in revenue for the month of March. And just this month alone, we are projecting to do a little close to $500,000 in total revenue. So things still look very, very positive. This brand does have its ups and downs, but overall, it's on the trend which we wanted to go in terms of scale. Now, how did we make this happen? What did we see when we first began with this brand? First things first, this brand, because it is in the automotive industry, has a fairly decent average order value of roughly $386. So in the last 30 days, if we go down, we can see roughly it's about $386, $387. And the break-even ROAS, because again, this sells very heavy car parts, car accessories, so it's not something that can just be drop shipped. So they actually have warehouses throughout the United States. This makes their break-even ROAS be at a high level of a 7x. However, in the last 30 days, we can see that we are well above that 7x ROAS at an 8.90x ROAS. So things are still extremely profitable for this brand. And because of the nature of this brand, again, we were not really focused more on getting recurring customers or having a high LTV for these users, because more often than not, these users will just come onto the website, purchase the product parts, because this brand does sell pickup truck car parts and accessories. They will probably purchase the pickup truck parts once or maybe twice, and that's about it. They will probably not shop with this brand again. So our entire approach was focused on the first order profitability basis. But essentially, when we first started to work with this brand, what I realized even during that time period when we first initially started working with them is having multiple different campaign types, multiple different campaign strategies is really not the way to go here. And just with this niche in general, because every niche is different, in this niche specifically, things such as search campaigns or demand gen campaigns or even YouTube, they're not really sought after as much. They're not the most profitable avenues for growth, because somebody who's searching for this type of product is searching for a solution to their problem. So maybe the engine within their pickup truck needs some work, or maybe something else got broken, or maybe they need some other types of axle parts, or whatever it is. They need to go on Google and they need to specifically type in that part's name or that part number, or with their car model, car brand, etc. So these searches that were getting done were very, very specific, and this is the main reason why there's such variation in terms of even sales coming for a lot of these products. I mean, if we go on over to these products and look at it on a 30-day basis, we can see that some car parts are much more popular than others. They will have 10, 15 sales, while others will barely have 4 sales, 5 sales. But in the grand scheme of things, because the AOV is high, they will end up generating a decent amount of revenue on a per SKU basis. So that's a major difference with this brand versus another, where you might purchase a shoe multiple times, or you might purchase a shirt multiple times, so on and so forth. But keeping that in mind, we wanted to approach this brand with a shopping and pmax based approach with maybe a little bit of branded search, which we ended up eventually getting rid of because we wanted to force his account to work off of cold traffic only. So that's essentially what we did when we first began. We wanted to implement more of a brand versus non-brand approach, which is what these two pmaxes do right here. So unlike other brands where we would take maybe a category-based approach, maybe we'll take a KPI-based approach where all products with a 3x ROAS or 4x ROAS will be grouped together and so on and so forth, we just went after a brand versus non-branded approach where one campaign that's going, this pmax campaign right here is going after branded traffic with a very high target ROAS of 1200%, and as we can see is doing a fairly decent job. However, the beautiful thing about this brand is the non-branded campaign is doing just as good with a lower amount of target ROAS restriction and is scaling to a much more aggressive level. So in turn, what ended up happening is this brand is now scaling based on cold traffic. About 90% is cold traffic, about 10% is retargeting. But essentially the reason why we took this approach is in total this brand has over 1600 different SKUs that we needed to focus on, and at this level of average order value it becomes very unrealistic to go after each SKU separately, to go after maybe a collection based approach or a KPI based approach, because it just doesn't work in the grand scheme of things. So keeping that in mind, we want to make sure the budget that we were spending here was not just getting spread too thin, rather it was more focused and with a better strategy in general. But we did not just start directly from the campaign. Instead, what we wanted to do initially was we wanted to dive deep into the foundation and ensure that our product foundation in general is much better than our competitors. This is what we do for 99% of the brands we work with under my agency or marketing, which by the way, if you run a brand doing $50,000 or more per month in revenue, you need some extra help scaling your brand to the next level, go on to my website at yourmarketing.com and schedule a completely free call with me, and let's see how we can potentially work together and make that happen. But what we initially saw when we first began work with this brand prior to November of 2024 was, although they had a decent amount of performance max and standard shopping campaigns running during that time, there was a lot of overlap going on within these products because there was no type of non-brand versus branded approach. All they were doing was essentially just testing everything out in a certain kind of approach where it would be just one major performance max campaign with the standard shopping campaign on the side, and that was literally it. And obviously during that time it was not helping too much in terms of scale. Even though the ROAS seemed to be at a 9.12x, this was not sustainable in total. We needed a bit more segregation for this traffic to not just be branded focused traffic, because that's essentially what was happening during that time. So the number one thing we did was niche research. We went into this niche and we completely devoured the different types of keywords that this brand could rank for, the different types of personas that people within this brand would shop for, etc. And we took all of that competitor research and we kind of implemented a better approach in terms of the product foundation, from the product title to the images to the attributes within the backend as well. All these things ended up improving as a result of having better keywords and more cold traffic oriented keywords, not just part specific keywords, but rather a little bit more broader in the sense that now instead of just targeting one specific car part or one specific model or one specific number in terms of the product itself, we were now targeting the part as a whole and going after a much broader traffic. But what we also knew during this time was previously, before running the campaigns here, this brand had done a lot of giveaways on Facebook, and their Google Analytics account had been connected to their Facebook ads account and the Google Ads account the whole time. So we could import a lot of these custom audiences as well as connect the GA4 tracking events back to the Google Ads account, which of course helped in terms of getting the account in the right direction. But this then brought us to initially developing a strategy. Again, the main focus we wanted to keep here was performance max and standard shopping. That's literally it. And even to this day, that's pretty much what the strategy here is. It's essentially very simple, where it's a non-branded campaign writer with a branded campaign, and this standard shopping campaign is going after all of the low traffic SKUs. So any product or any SKU with low traffic and not a lot of people searching for it is what we are targeting here. And then this final search standard shopping campaign is essentially a catch-all campaign, meaning this campaign is designed to run on a very high target ROAS. It has all of the products that this brand sells, but it's very high target ROAS, so it can be very, very profitable. And as you can see, it's running at a fairly decent overall return on ad spend of 11x, but it's not generating the most amount of revenue compared to the other campaigns. But that's essentially what it's designed to do. Now, in terms of scaling, how are we approaching scaling with such a limited approach? Well, obviously, we don't want to scale be a horizontal scaling where we add more campaign tabs, because that would ruin the overall simplistic approach here. And more likely than not, these other campaigns like search, demand gen, YouTube will probably not work for this niche in general, just based on my experience. So what we are planning to do is, and what we are already doing, is we're doing a lot of vertical scaling, where every so often we will increase the budgets, we will decrease the restrictions to allow the campaigns to spend a lot more money. Because at this point, even with this level of scale, we're only reaching about 20% of the impression share of the total market. Click share is still less than 10%. So that means we still have a lot of room to grow. And we want to optimize not only the campaigns by scaling the budgets, but we want to optimize the back end, because every week we are ranking now for better and bigger keywords, because now we are naturally implementing these keywords into the back end, which is further allowing the Google Ads algorithm to go after even broader traffic and to go after even bigger keywords, which ultimately is what happens when you optimize the foundation along with scaling the ad spend. But that's essentially the long-term scope of this brand. Again, if you run a brand doing $50,000 or more per month in revenue, you need some extra help scaling to the next level with Google Ads, go on to my website at yourmarketing.com and schedule a completely free call with me, and let's see how we can potentially work together and make that happen.